Greetings. Welcome to our stream today. So excited to go ahead and jump into today's news for the week. Hello, everybody. I hope you had a fantastic week here. Today, we are set to explore the brand new era for Marvel Comics X-Men. We're finally going to go ahead and get to what lies for the mutants after the Krakoan era over at Marvel Comics. Before we talk about the brand new X-Men news, I want to take a few steps back and talk about some of the video reviews that we were able to go ahead and post to the channel. I think both DC and Marvel had some fantastic offerings this week, so we started things off with Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin are currently trying to reestablish their relationship over the course of this brand new series, only 7 issues in. And this upcoming, most recent issue of the series finally reintroduced artist Simone DeMeo back to the interiors of the comic book. I really find that Simone DeMeo's interiors are really like increasing in some of their legibility and enjoyment between issue after issue of the core series. I feel like DeMeo is such a strong storyteller now in the scope of his ongoing interior art. So elsewhere, we also had a few opportunities to talk about some of those ongoing plot threads from the Robin series from 2021 with Joshua Williamson and Gleb Melnikov. Specifically, the character of Flatline was reintroduced towards that comic book and now has like a mysterious new relationship with Damian, which is seemingly fueled by some of the rest of the Batman players across the issue here. Fall of the House of X, I thought, was yet another wonderful comic book issue over from Marvel. I'm a little interested with how much heat this series is getting, despite the fact that the plotting and characterization is so good on this title. I think the storyline with Juggernaut and the Krakoan tree is just so incredibly epic in Fall of the House of X. And I just continue to be impressed with the way that Jerry Duggan has continually managed his supporting cast in really just interesting and fascinating ways, stemming from people like Emma Frost or just any of the cast members showing up across the pages of X-Men. I think Polaris in particular just had a wonderful shout out in some previous issues of the series too. So we also had a chance to preview the most recent issue of Amazing Spider-Man. That was issue 45, featuring artwork from the epic Carmen Carnero. I thought the way that that book picked up all the pieces of the Spider-Man franchise after the gang war was so interesting. Plus, that issue also featured a return to the mysterious Aunt Anna, which actually segues into some X-Men plot threads, because Mary Jane's Aunt Anna took this mysterious Krakoan medicine invented by the X-Men, which was sabotaged by Orcus. So once again here, the fact that Spider-Man and X-Men are connecting in these really interesting ways just builds such a unique, legibility and universe towards Spider-Man. Plus, I love how in previous issues the series also implemented dark web towards the X-Men. So there's just so much narrative continuity spilling between both X-Men and Spider-Man. I want to officially welcome you over to our stream today. Today's stream is really going to be focused on the brand new era of Marvel Comics X-Men titles. So we've really been hyping up the new X-Men launch for such a long time, and I think Marvel's most recent Krakoan era is really important over to just the X-Men comic book universe because it took a high concept and ran with it for such a long time. Over the course of years of publishing, X-Men From the Ashes seems to be set up from the end of Krakoa and is teasing just new books, new comic books, new launches, and new characters. Without further ado here, why don't we go ahead and jump into the brand new roster and lineup of X-Men titles making up the From the Ashes relaunch. So let's go ahead and get into it right now. This one is coming in over on Marvel.com. It was published 2 days ago on March 14th. The future of the X-Men revealed. Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman's X-Men. Gail Simone and Marquez's Uncanny X-Men. And Eve Ewing and Carmen Carnero's Exceptional X-Men will be the core ongoing series in an all-new era of mutant storytelling. So here we have it. So many of the pieces from X-Men From the Ashes are finally revealed here. We also have artwork coming in just directly from Ryan Stegman previewing these three disparate books, which are seemingly leading the way for X-Men From the Ashes. We've been following Marvel Comics creators for such a long time that I think now we have a pretty good grasp on some of the creators, especially the writers who are lending just new ideas to the publisher. Let's go ahead and check in on Uncanny X-Men. So this one really looks to be the flagship title. Both Gail Simone and David Marquez were advertised so early in the X-Men line and are also set to contribute a story to the X-Men Free Comic Book Day issue, setting up the From the Ashes story. So Gail Simone, we've talked about previously over on our streams. I really think that her Secret Six run is excellent. David Marquez has done so much wonderful Marvel work in the past, especially stemming to just great work over with Miles Morales. For me, I think David Marquez is one of the best pencilers, period, for the Miles Morales character. I also want to take a few moments and comment on this cast of X Men characters. As soon as I saw the lineup for this Uncanny X Men roster, I was immediately thinking about how this team really looks to be incredibly trendy, featuring Nightcrawler, Jubilee, Rogue, Gambit, and Wolverine. I feel like due to the fact that Rogue and Gambit are now married, their presence in the Marvel Universe has really been bolstered. Jubilee has like a slightly different costume, echoing some of that 90s era. And it looks like Nightcrawler in particular is returning to a back to basics getup here. Nightcrawler, I just want to take a few moments and comment on. I am really sad about the fact that X-Men From the Ashes is returning him to a more basic status quo. I thought having, Nightcrawler operate around the Marvel universe as the Uncanny Spider-Man was such like a thrilling like expansion of his character. I maybe wish after he returned to his most basic status quo that we would have gotten a new costume for Kurt so it doesn't feel like the X-Men are kind of charting backwards. Plus, I think some of the artwork, in this teaser image isn't as precise as some of the teasers we got for X-Men, featuring like those big, beautiful pictures of Mark Brooks detailed with so many individual mutants. Still, though, I think, this Uncanny X-Men ongoing has so much potential, and Gail Simone, David Marquez is an excellent creative team, and I think this is a pretty good roster of X-Men. Okay, let's head into our second comic book here. This one for me is so much more exciting than the flagship book. Jed MacKay, I've been such a big fan of over at Marvel Comics recently. I think his Doctor Strange run has been really great. And we're also going to pick up on Vengeance of the Moon Knight with a new preview a little bit later in our stream today. Jed MacKay is just so good at telling like ongoing plotting and superhero stories and always bringing out like interesting and subversive elements to never really repeat himself on the page. I also think this team of X-Men is really interesting. We have like really back to basics mutants like Cyclops, but we also have like some off the beaten path characters like Juggernaut. We have this really interesting new era for Beast coming out of X-Force, as well as it looks like Quanin here. I think the new costume for Juggernaut is really, really cool, and I'm super interested in this new getup for this character here. Plus, Magic is also featured on this team. I know in the X-Men From the Ashes reboot, she's set to have a really high profile here. So I really think that that makes this X-Men ongoing appear to be super climactic. I don't know how much I really like this costume for Cyclops. I feel like it introduces too much yellow and isn't overall as streamlined as maybe some of those costumes we saw during the Krakoan era. I think the wild card in this series is also Magneto. Watching Magneto come back to life very slowly in Resurrection of Magneto, written by Al Ewing, featuring artwork from Luciano Vecchio, is amazing. The fact that Magneto and Cyclops are going to be working side by side along with this interesting roster of X-Men, to me, is just fascinating here. Okay, let's go ahead and preview our final book. And I want to give you a bit of a teaser here. For me, this is one of the most exciting entries. It features Emma Frost and Shadowcat, plus a brand new team of X-Men characters. Plus, this one also has a really interesting creative team. We have writing from Eve Ewing as well as art from Carmen Carnero. And if you've been paying attention to the channel here, we just recently spotlighted that fantastic issue of Amazing Spider Man Chapter 45, which also featured just brilliant artwork from Carnero. To me, Carnero is such a good like pulp and noir artist and just did a wonderful job on the publisher's recent Captain America comic book title. I am really, really interested to see how Carnero is going to get those facial expressions for Emma Frost, due to the fact that that character just evokes so much humor in her surroundings as well. Plus, Shadowcat's going to be really interesting to chart in the From the Ashes era. It kind of felt like Kitty broke bad during some of those, especially those early Krakoan days. And Fall of X also featured, just really, really horrific scenarios. That have really put Kate in a really haunting place emotionally. So I am so interested to see how she's going to kind of pick up the pieces of her own like mental map here and try and lead a brand new team of X-Men characters. Nobody except me. Fantastic to have you in chat today. It's an interesting new lineup. I completely agree. I feel like this one has so much potential. For me, Eve Ewing has been so ambitious in her Black Panther run, and the fact that this exceptional X-Men book also features, so many new X-Men characters, as well as like familiar characters and slightly new context for me, is just super thrilling here. Yeah, this one for me is one of my most anticipated books. That being said, there are a couple more books that Marvel detailed, and we will be going over each and every one of them over our stream today. But I just kind of wanted to say here that I'm a little disappointed that we don't have any returning X-Men writers involved in any of this lineup. The one person who I was really hoping to see included on this list who isn't here is Simon Spurrier. I know Simon Spurrier is so busy right now at like DC Comics with comic books like The Flash and Hellblazer. But I think the way that Simon Spurrier writes both Legion and Nightcrawler is like unmatched at Marvel Comics. And I really hope he gets a chance to finish out some of those plot threads and continue the really long form story he's been telling with Nightcrawler. Also, it really kind of pains me to see somebody else taking on the character of Magneto, especially because Resurrection of Magneto from Al Ewing has been nothing short of just absolutely wonderful. Jed MacKay is a really wonderful writer, and I think writes anti-heroes really, really well, but I still wonder how it's going to compare to the really badass way that Al Ewing approached Magneto in comic books like X-Men Red and the aforementioned Resurrection of Magneto title as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this initial teaser image here. Let's check out Nobody Except Me's other comment. They should have brought over at least one Krakoan Age writer artist to make it a more smooth transition. I totally agree with you. I think maybe in the surrounding lineup of X-Men titles that we'll go over in just a second, hopefully we'll get one or two of those comic book writers coming back. I think Jerry Duggan has done wonderful stuff in Fall of the House of X, and frankly, I would love to see him included in one of these books as well, or maybe just keeping on the Invincible Iron Man series. Invincible Iron Man has been just a wonderful sister title to the X-Men and has been able to move so many plot threads forward in just really interesting and engaging ways. Thankfully, I am going to put my money where my mouth is over on this stream because we're going to be talking about all of these comic books in previews in just a few moments. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the other comic books and maybe what some of these creators have to say about these brand new X-Men books. So this one is coming in from Marvel.com on March 14th. In the wake of their acclaimed Krakoan Age, witness the X-Men's latest evolution this summer in X-Men From the Ashes. Just now, at the Future of Marvel Comics X-Men and Digital Comics panel at South by Southwest, Editor-in-Chief C.B. Cebulski and VP Executive Editor Tom Brevoort were joined by writers Jed MacKay and Gail Simone to announce what's coming next for Marvel's line of X-Men comics. I don't know if anybody was paying attention really in depth, but it seemed like Jed McKay's name leaked out very shortly before they had that panel. So just a couple hours before they announced these X-Men books, we all had a really strong suspicion that Jed McKay was set to take on one of these books. The new era of X-Men will be centered around three flagship titles written and drawn by some of today's most influential and acclaimed creators. Jed McKay and Ryan Stegman's X-Men, Gail Simone and David Marquez's Uncanny X-Men, and Eve Ewing and Carmen Carnero's exceptional X-Men. Each series will offer different explorations of the mutant mythos as they take Marvel's Merry Mutants into bold and untrodden territory. AfroSF says, I will check out Dr. Eve Ewing's other books. Not sure about the other books. Yeah, me too. Me too. AfroSF, greetings, Arakko Braddock. Cyclops looks about 19 years old in the promo. I think that more so has something to do with the way that Ryan Stegman approaches these figures as to maybe the direction of the entire line. And you know what? After reading Fall of the House of X issue 3, I think I really agree with you because the way that Jethro Morales and Lucas Wernick illustrate Cyclops, he looks a lot taller, looks a lot older, and has like different facial features too. Ryan Stegman, not my favorite artist in comics, as I think I've already mentioned in the course of this live stream today. I wish we had like Pepe Larraz, Mark Brooks. I wish we had somebody else draw this teaser image, but it's honestly not that bad here. There's a lot of different characters that Stegman is able to get on one page, and they're emoting pretty well too. By the way, I don't know if we shouted this out, and we should. This teaser image has colors from Marte Gracia. Okay, over their 60-year history, the X-Men have been many things: outcasts, teachers, revolutionaries, heroes. Above all, they're a species, and the future is still theirs for the taking. Krakoa showed the world what Homo Superior is truly capable of, and now the X-Men have to fight harder than ever to keep Professor X's dream alive. These three core series will approach the X-Men's vital mission with distinct and relevant perspectives while remaining faithful to the storytelling and the mutant metaphor. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and play the trailer for X-Men From the Ashes, but we have to do so without sound. There's still some really cool like continuity elements in here, so let's go ahead and check it out right now. Let's see, give me just 1 second here. I want to make sure our sound is all the way off. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and restart this one more time. Okay, we really see, the fact that there's so much distrust sowed within the people of Earth as well as the X-Men too. Mutants are feared and hated, is what this preview page states. Also, it's really cool to see some of David Marquez's artwork here for the character of Jubilee. David Marquez, always fantastic at faces, and I feel like this interpretation of Jubilee is actually pretty close to some of that Krakoan era art that I'm looking for here. I think these brand new symbols, that the X-Men are trading back and forth together to share like, mysterious information is a great way to move the X-Men forward while acknowledging some of those elements from the Fall of X storyline as well. Once again, we get to see just how cool Marquez's artwork is. And then here's a look at the Jed McKay X-Men team. And the Eve Ewing exceptional X-Men roster. Okay, honestly, I wish they had a little bit more artwork for this reveal. Definitely a cool post-credit scene featured here, introducing the mysterious inmate X. Okay, and then we have our overall teaser reminding us that on July 10th, X-Men From the Ashes officially kicks off here. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the core X-Men title. This one is written by Jed McKay, featuring art by Ryan Stegman. Krakoa is no more, but the X-Men fight on from their new base in Alaska. The X-Men raise a flag of defiance. Join Cyclops, Beast, Magneto, Psylocke, Kid Omega, Temper, Magic, and Juggernaut as they assemble against new forces, battling for the destiny and philosophy of the mutant species. Mutant business is their business. Um, this team of X-Men is so cool. I love the fact that Oya has taken on this brand new name of Temper. She's always been an interesting X-Men character. Plus, Kid Omega had some great personality during the Krakoan age of X-Men. Having him on a team once again here with Psylocke and Magneto is super compelling. It's not just those three titles in this relaunch. There's a lot, McKay shared at the panel. My X-Men title is where we'll see the first inklings of what the X-Men lineup will look like in 2024. I'm very excited for you guys to see it when it comes out. If you look at that lineup, they're a group of people who are not well suited to integrating into the world, and in these books, we'll see what that means and what it looks like going forward. One of the larger aspects I want to talk about involving this main like X-Men series is the fact that these characters are based out of Alaska. I was really looking for the X-Men to have like a big bombastic new status quo when they entered the From the Ashes era. Also, I did want to talk about how the editorial hands changed in terms of Krakoa to From the Ashes, with Tom Brevoort taking control of the X-Men publishing line. One thing I'm definitely worried about as we continue to look through all these books is the fact that Brevoort appears to be positioning in the line towards a more back to basics approach. I think a little bit later on our stream, we'll be able to have this conversation in a lot more depth when we take a look at the preview for XMenForever coming from Marvel. That book just features so many interesting pieces of history and like Krakoan history packaged in such a compelling way. And I definitely think that Marvel is losing a lot of plot threads as they head into From the Ashes. I wish they were a little bit more focused on maybe some of the final after effects of the fall of the House of X status quo. Okay, let's talk about Uncanny X-Men. This is a really exciting, team roster and creative team. For me, Gail Simone coming to a big, bombastic X-Men franchise is just hopefully as epic as it sounds here. I really like Gail's personality, and I hope it really integrates towards the cast of these X-Men characters. Uncanny X-Men also features artwork from David Marquez. And this one is on sale August 7th. So it looks like these issues are releasing just 1 month out from each other. We get X-Men in July, Uncanny X-Men in August, and Exceptional X-Men in September. Outlaw heroes once again, the X-Men embark on a new mission. Making themselves at home in the Big Easy, the X-Men protect a world that hates and fears them. Join Rogue, Gambit, Nightcrawler, Jubilee, and Wolverine on explosive superhero adventures. Uncanny as ever, the X-Men are back to saving the day mutant style. I think X fans are special in that we identify with having something different about us, and you're going to feel that in this book. And what it means to have that thing about you that's different or exceptional. We go deep into the emotional part of that, Simone told the crowd. David Marquez is the perfect artist for this book. He does amazing action, amazing character work, and he's really excited about getting into the characters appearing in this book. I knew from the very first panel that this book was going to be super exciting and gorgeous. He just knows how to knock it right out of the park. So as I look through this Uncanny X-Men series, Marvel Comics really has to get ambitious with this one. This is a really familiar team of X-Men characters, right? Rogue, Gambit, Nightcrawler, Jubilee, Wolverine. They have costumes that are very similar to some of the most recognizable outfits that they've ever had. So, in order to tell a story that really pushes on the boundaries of Marvel and also matches up to some of the incredible comic books that we've seen during Krakoa, there has to be some kind of big status quo, some big revelation here. Really hoping that Gail Simone and Marquez will pull through on Uncanny X-Men, and we only have to wait a couple more months to find out what they have in store. Exceptional X-Men. So I think we've already shared that I am the most anticipated for this book in particular. This one features writing from Eve Ewing and art by Carmen Carnero. Mutantkind's two greatest teachers mold the next generation of X-Men. Kate Pryde has returned home to Chicago following the war with Orchis, having stepped away from the world of mutantdom. I was really wondering how they would pick up on Kitty or Kate Pryde after the Krakoan status quo. And it looks like she returns home, tries to get back in touch with her roots, but then ends up headed back over to the X-Men in order to help a trio of young new mutants. So those characters are Bronze, Axo, and Melee. And this also introduces Emma Frost towards the book as well. Longtime fans of Kitty Pryde can count on the kinds of adventures you expect from her as a classic favorite. While I hope new and older readers alike will get to love this all-new X-Men team of young mutants. Kitty, the one-time kid sister figure of the X-Men, has to reckon with her own memories, good and bad, being a child of Xavier as she navigates a role as leader and mentor for a new generation of mutants who are trying to make their way in a time of crisis. I have to say, I don't know how this new era of X-Men is going to operate. I don't know if they're going to take on those really long-term plottings like previous X-Men eras have. In terms of Kitty, she's such an interesting character right now at Marvel, and I really hope Eve Ewing can keep some of the darkness introduced towards her in the Krakoan era and still tell a comic book, centered around two, older X-Men characters leading a group of brand new mutants. There's a lot of potential in this one, and I really hope it's realized by Marvel. I always try to strike a chord between appealing to veteran comics fans and new readers, but since so many people fell in love with the X-Men as teens, this book is about a team of young folk. That feels especially important to me here. I hope that for some 13 or 14-year-old readers, this might be the first comic book they pick up. I hope so too. This is a brand new team of X-Men characters. I think it'd be so cool if you had like some random comic book reader, coming into the shop, picking up an issue of Exceptional X-Men and thinking that this is what the Marvel comic book universe is all about. Let's check out our comment that we have too. AfroSF says, I would be happy if Eve Ewing has a Black Panther cameo in her book. I'm not sure if Emma Frost and T'Challa have met. Yeah, that is a really cool call out. And also, like, maybe Eve Ewing will bring a meta narrative and connect some of the plot threads of Black Panther with Exceptional X-Men. I think that would be super, super cool. I think as of right now, we just don't know what kind of writer Eve Ewing is and if she is really going to write to that effect there as well. Working on this series has been a ton of fun already, as Carmen Carnero's art is bringing so much dynamism to these pages, and the entire team of X-writers is in a flurry of sharing scripts and feedback and ideas. The X-Men are fractured in the aftermath of the end of Krakoa, scattered across the globe without a central base of operation. Marvel Comics VP Executive Editor Tom Brevoort explained. What that means in practice is that all three titles carrying the name X-Men are core X-Men series. They all center around one of the major aspects that the team has been at different points. This is very much by design. We want to field a wide assortment of X titles with different styles and tones and approaches, an X-Men book for virtually any taste. So here we go. We get the introduction of what X-Men From the Ashes is all about from Marvel Comics VP Executive Editor Tom Brevoort himself. So, one of the ideas behind X-Men from the Ashes is that the X-Men are kind of scattered across the globe. To me, this sounds kind of familiar, and that's because it also seems to be the mantra surrounding the Fall of X storyline. Just the additional context there is that these X-Men are scattered across the globe because they just got dealt a deadly blow from Orcus. So I think this is a good idea at this stage in terms of Marvel Comics. Maybe introducing a big bombastic plot device would be too soon because the Krakoan era just wrapped up here. I guess selfishly, what I'm hoping is that maybe in the next year or two, the X Men comics will relaunch in terms of a stronger, maybe long form narrative, maybe keep some of these creators and books around and just, strengthen the entire line in general with some new ideas. Before I get any farther ahead of myself, let's go ahead and talk about the remaining X Men comics that we haven't talked about. Okay, so we have a brand new Phoenix comic book. I remember one of the most recent Jean Grey comics was written by Louise Simonson. I would be really interested to see if she came back over to the Phoenix book. There were a couple of criticisms in terms of the writing. I think it was a little bit hard to connect, the plot threads of Jean Grey to the overall Marvel universe and to Fall of X in general. So, really hoping that in the future of this new Phoenix book, the plotting will be a little bit more easy to follow. We also have a return to NYX. NYX has a really mysterious and very controversial history at Marvel. I am really interested to see like who this new team of characters are going to be and what this book is going to be all about. X Factor and X Force, I feel like have both taken on like so many different eras and incarnations over the years. I have no idea what this new era of either of these books is going to look like. Our previous X Force comic was centered around like a Black Ops team in Krakoa and featured Beast like doubling down on all of his war crimes and making him a really villainous character. So I'd be curious to see if the From the Ashes storyline is going to continue in that direction or maybe mix up some of those plot threads and tell a different story. We also have Storm. So Storm right now is featured in the Resurrection of Magneto comic book alongside Max Magneto himself. These two characters have had a great working relationship, and it's just been so epic to watch their discourse and back and forth throughout that issue. Also, Wolverine. Right now, Wolverine is battling a massive, massive saber-tooth war. I'm interested to see maybe how he's connected to the rest of the From the Ashes books as we head towards, the next era of X-Men comics here. All right, well, that was a very brief look at some of the additional titles for X-Men From the Ashes. I think it's going to be a lot easier to get excited about some of these books when we have creative teams and promotional art. In particular, I feel like I'm going to get a lot of dopamine here when we finally get to see some of the art, some of the interior artwork and covers for Exceptional X-Men. All right, let's see. Give me 1 second here. Perfect. Okay. Let's go ahead and read the last couple bits of this press release from Marvel, and then we will head into our really epic previews for the stream today. This is only the beginning, and fans shouldn't fret if they see their favorite mutant icons just yet. In the coming weeks, get ready for more X-Men title announcements, including new ongoing team books, solo series, and more. Catch a glimpse at some of the future titles and stay tuned for full announcements, plus the main cover reveals and first looks for X-Men 1, Uncanny X-Men 1, and Exceptional X-Men 1. Check out all three cast lineups on Ryan Stegman and Marte Gracia's X-Men From the Ashes promotional image. All right, so just a couple more choice sentences over from this press release. This one is teasing that there's going to be new comic books launching as well. In addition to all these series, we're still set to see brand new solo books, brand new team books coming in from Marvel in the From the Ashes launch. Hopefully, some of these Krakoan writers will be featured across their books, and maybe we'll get an outlet for Simon Spurrier to write his epic narrative over with the characters of Legion and Nightcrawler. Selfishly, I'd love to see Jerry Duggan also return as well. Okay, so I think as of right now, that is going to be the end of our X-Men from the Ashes coverage. I had such a great time covering that one in a lot of depth here. The very next state where we're going to see X-Men from the Ashes is going to be in Free Comic Book Day 2024 Blood Hunt X-Men. Looks like this one is on sale May 4th, featuring a tale by Gail Simone. In June's X-Men 35, the 700th issue of Uncanny X-Men will also feature stories by both Gail Simone and Jed MacKay. So we'll get a little bit of a shadow launch for X-Men from the Ashes in terms of Free Comic Book Day and in that grand finale, X-Men issue 2. So just wrapping up some of our coverage for X-Men from the Ashes, I'd say in general, the rosters, teams, and creators look really, really good. I just hope moving forward in terms of X-Men continuity, in the future, there's going to be a storyline that's going to rival the epic plot threads and really grand storytelling of Krakoa. There's actually more Marvel news in addition to just some of the X-Men stories. Let's go ahead and take a look at this brand new chapter of Spider-Man that is set to reveal the publisher's plans for 2024. This is Web of Spider-Man issue 1, featuring an epic cover over from Greg Capullo. I want to read this blurb on the cover. It says, featuring first tastes of the biggest spider stories of 2024. We also read a preview of this issue on a previous stream, and I really got word that Marvel is going to feature some epic plot threads in this one. By the way, I want to give a big thanks to Adventures in Poor Taste, and let's check out our solicit on Web of Spider-Man 1. 2024 is primed to be one of the biggest years in spider history. You've only seen the tip of the iceberg. In the pages of this one shot, we're going to lay out some of the biggest upcoming spider stories and characters in the Spider-Verse through the beginning of 2025. You aren't going to want to miss this. I want to shout out the creative team on this one because there's so many people involved in Web of Spider-Man. This one is written by Zeb Wells, Alex Segarra, Greg Weisman, and Steve Folks. The artwork is from Ed McGuinness, Salvador LaRocca, Marcio Menis, and Frank D'Armata, and the cover on this one is illustrated by Greg Capullo and FCO Placencia. This is a huge issue coming in at 56 pages. So on the very first page of our teaser, we get a look at Madam Web. I think right now Madam Web is in a really interesting place due to the fact that that movie hasn't maybe gone over as well as Marvel would have liked it to. Still, Madam Web is a really important character in terms of Marvel continuity, and I'm loving how she's referencing some of these elements of Spider-Man 2. On this page, she's talking about the spider totems and talking about the web of life that she watches over as well. Also, getting these point of view characters kind of hyping up upcoming plot points in these big anthology issues is always a ton of fun. This next issue previews the ultra-modern status quo over from Miles Morales, where he's taken on some of these vampires. Wonder if this preview page is actually teasing Marvel Comics' Blood Hunt story. I love the page composition in this. I feel like it's super dynamic. And also the introduction of the Hightail character in the last panel is also really interesting here too. Okay, this tease to me is so much fun here. I think this is an Ed McGuinness page, judging from the roster of artists. And this one features a character from the Insidious 6 escaping limbo, as we get to see our character of Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin in hot pursuit, trying to get this character. I really love the plot threads in Limbo and when they're re-explored through the context of the Amazing Spider-Man franchise. And man, I think this page just brings out a visceral energy. So our last preview page of Web of Spider-Man also previews the return of Chasm, also known as Ben Reilly, towards the Marvel Universe. I want to read the quick blurb that he says here. My energy powers may be new, but I'm getting better at them every day. And it looks like I finally have control to disrupt the witchy runes, locking me in this literal hellhole. So it looks like Chasm, also known as Ben Riley, is finally set to escape the Limbo Embassy where he's been trapped in for so long in terms of the publisher's continuity. Okay, we have one final page here introducing Kane the Scarlet Spider back into the narrative of Spider Man. I actually want to read once again these blurbs. Sounds like Madam Web pointed me in the right direction. Riley busted out of his hell prison and ran straight for the dankest, darkest part of the city he could find. I don't know what Ben and I owe each other after all we've been through, but someone needs to keep an eye on him while he spirals, and it seems like Parker has his hands full. In this introduction of Kane, the fact that he's referencing Ben Riley as Chasm and talking about recent developments over the course of Spider Man is so fascinating. I'm also really theorizing this is a page from Greg Land. I think the panel bleeds with Kane is super, super interesting and dynamic too. I definitely didn't expect to see Miguel O'Hara, the Spider Man of 2099 in Web of Spider Man, but it looks like we have Miguel joining the roster of Spider Heroes too. He says, so the thing about people who can see into the future, they can be a little grating, okay, a lot grating. So whenever Madam Web gets all, this is a threat to the entire universe and beyond, I tend to shrug and wait for it to pan out. Well, it's panning out. Web of Spider-Man really does a solid job introducing so many of the ancillary Spider-Man cast members. I am really hoping that this one is going to be able to connect some of these spider heroes together and actually deliver a threat that all of these characters will have to fight back against. For me, I'm so interested to see Ben Riley return to the pages of Amazing Spider-Man. I know we're set to get that in just a couple issues here, and maybe setting up some of these plot threads in advance for Web of Spider-Man should increase, some of the enjoyment of the overall series here. So really phenomenal stuff that Marvel Comics is setting up here. I'm loving the fact that they're connecting so many of their Spider characters just in advance of 2024. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about Vengeance of the Moon Knight. This has been a wonderful ongoing series from Marvel. I've been really impressed to see how so many of the characters of the Midnight Mission are reacting to this brand new Moon Knight character really wreaking havoc across New York. This is the third issue of the comic book, and also Marvel's editorial has really previewed the fact that Vengeance of the Moon Knight is going to be one of the core books setting up the publisher's upcoming Blood Hunt event. Plus, this one is also written by Jed MacKay, who is featuring writing on that main X-Men title too. So let's see what Jed MacKay and Alessandro Cappuccio have in store for Vengeance of the Moon Knight issue 3. This one coming in from Adventures in Poor Taste, Vengeance Exacted. As the new Moon Knight serves his own vision of justice, Mark Spector's allies and friends take it upon themselves to find his base of operations and take the fight to him. But the Fist of Khonshu holds a bloody and well-earned reputation, one which the likes of Hunter's Moon, Tigra, and Soldier are all about to experience firsthand. Let's read some of the preview over on Vengeance of the Moon Knight issue 3. Mark Spector, Moon Knight, sacrificed himself to save Manhattan from the villainous Black Spectre. In his absence, his friends have taken it upon themselves to keep his work, his Midnight Mission, running. Working from Moon Knight's living brownstone, former vampire assistant Reese, fellow Fist of Khonshu, Hunter's Moon, reformed criminal 8-Ball, Spectre's former teammate Tigra, and ex-mercenary Soldier quickly found themselves impeded by the interference of a mysterious new Moon Knight now clad in black. The group's joy at Moon Knight's miraculous resurrection waned quickly as he attacked them and attempted to claim the Midnight Mission by force. The group repelled the imposter Moon Knight, but not before he vowed to kill them if they interfered with his work. So this one is colored by Rochelle Rosenberg, featured letters by VC's Corey Petit, and a cover by David Paratore. So in terms of Vengeance of the Moon Knight, Alessandro Cappuccio's art is so incredibly dark. Getting it realized in the context of a darker vision of this Moon Knight character is so, so beautiful and interesting. The colors and the composition of each of these pages here is just mesmerizing. I think at this point, Jed MacKay has really realized a solid cast in terms of the Midnight Mission with the vampire assistant Reese, the character of Hunter's Moon, and Tigra, who got some really strong characterization in a previous issue of Vengeance of the Moon Knight 2. Also, this page composition is incredibly dynamic here and features such a strong background with Hunter's Moon. Man, this is our final preview page. Once again, Capuccio, just an incredible artist. I'd frankly love to see what he could deliver maybe on a Batman or Daredevil book. I wonder if he had a bigger platform, if he would be recognized as strong, as an artist as Greg Capullo. So this brand new mysterious Moon Knight character is just lurking just in the background, and we have some narration here. This guy, this fake Moon Knight wearing the boss's colors, is making trouble for us, scaring the supervillains, bringing heat to our door, to our neighborhood, to our territory, turning it into a war zone. He's tearing down everything the boss builds. Really love hearing some of our Midnight Mission characters comment on the dangerous activities that the brand new Moon Knight character has taken on in terms of Vengeance of the Moon Knight. I want to be honest, this is a really gimmicky comic book series because we don't know the identity of this new Moon Knight character, but the way that Marvel kind of teases the leverage they have of the mysterious identity of this character makes Vengeance of the Moon Knight so interesting to me. When we finally know who this brand new Moon Knight character is, going back and checking out previous installments of the series to see how some of the characterization lines up should be so much fun here. All right, so that is our coverage on Vengeance of the Moon Knight 3. Really encourage you guys to go ahead and pick this up if you've fallen off on this title. All right, why don't we talk about an absolutely huge, bombastic comic book series? I think this is probably one of our second biggest previews of the stream today. This is none other than the third issue of Resurrection of Magneto coming in from Marvel Comics. Previous issues have featured so much conflict between some of the discussions of Storm and Max, as Max really struggles to find a reason to return to life. Previous issues of the series were also hinting at so many elements of Krakoa that Al Ewing and Luciano Vecchio continue to implement within the narrative. Also, the second issue featured a look at this mysterious character whose identity is actually revealed over the course of this preview. Without further ado, let's check out Resurrection of Magneto, Issue 3's interior pages from Adventures in Poor Taste. Falls the shadow. In the cold, dark rooms beyond death, there are terrible things, annihilators, adversaries, and a king of shadows, who seeks a new soul to live in. The time of easy miracles is over. For Storm and Magneto, all the roads back to life are hard, and this is the hardest of them all. All right, so this one features color work from David Curio, and we have a cover from Stefano Castelli and Jesus Abertov. Oh man, this opening page from Luciano Vecchio featuring the Annihilation helmet is so ominous, and once again does a phenomenal job checking in with a key plot point in Krakoa just before the publisher wraps up the whole thing in the final issues of X-Men. I want to read some of the captions and narration. They're just written so well from writer Al Ewing. Somewhere in the dark cold, underneath of everything, somewhere just behind me is a face. It is vast and golden pitiless. It is the face of death for worlds and for spirits, the face of annihilation. The way that Al Ewing has been able to pick up on the animosity between various characters in X-Men Red and maybe some of those elements of Sword also really stay intact in Resurrection and Magneto. I feel like a lot of these character plot points are hitting harder than they would have in other books too. The Annihilation helmet says, "Ororo, did you honestly think we were done?" So previous chapters of Resurrection and Magneto featured like really interesting, Krakoan characters like Tarn the Uncaring. This final panel on Resurrection and Magneto here, on the second preview page is so dark as we have the Shadow King taking off the mask of annihilation and revealing that there is way more to this conflict than Storm realizes at first. I want to read more of the dialogue. The Shadow King says, "So, annihilation was truly a mask, or the Shadow King is the facet of annihilation? Perhaps you're thinking, too small, Wind Rider. Perhaps we are Legion, each with our own name and role, yet each aligned. Perhaps you battled us many times in many borrowed guises. Perhaps you battle us every day of your life, and on into the future in endless war. And so I ask again, Aurora, are we done?" Yeah, this final panel just pulls off an X-Men Red plot point with so much just bombastic energy, with Aurora saying, "No, we are never done." Really phenomenal character work in Resurrection of Magneto 3, just centered around Storm alone. I really like the way that Al Ewing is really testing both Aurora and Max throughout each issue of this comic book. And I just think there's this first preview page featuring Storm going up against the Mask of Annihilation is also just so beautiful. All right, I could not be more hyped about Resurrection of Magneto issue 3. It looks like this one is on sale this Wednesday, March 20th. We are going to have a full comic book review talking in depth about Max's fight against the mysterious Shadow King. Okay, let's also go ahead and talk about the latest issue of Marvel Comics' Invincible Iron Man. This is chapter 16. This one is also set to introduce elements of Iron Man's Mysterium armor that he's really been trying to kind of hoard up across previous issues of the installment. Also, we really saw Iron Man work together with characters like Riri Williams' Ironheart, as well as Forge, to try and build a larger assembly line of, Iron Man characters to take on those Stark Sentinels manufactured by Orcus. Without further ado, let's preview Jerry Dugan and Chris Lee's work on Invincible Iron Man 16. D-Day is here, and there is absolutely a main event. Iron Man vs. Fei Long. Get ready for the biggest clash of armor you've ever seen, plus Tony gets some new suits. Once again here, this one written by Jerry Duggan, featuring art by Chris Lee. Let's see here. We also have inks from Walden Wong, colors from Brian Valenza, and VC's Joe Caramagna contributes the letters, with the first series artist Cale New providing covers still. Fei Long and the anti-mutant think tank Orcus have used Stark Unlimited to produce mutant hunting sentinels with Iron Man technology and forced most of Earth's mutants to flee the planet. To fight them, Tony has teamed up with Emma Frost and the Hellfire Club, going so far as to create an alias for Emma as his new wife. Unveiling the cutting-edge Mark 72 armor forged entirely from the mutant metal Mysterium, Tony has lured Fei Long and his Sentinels to Australia, clearing the way for the Resistance counterattack. But Stark has one more trick up his sleeve. The Mark 72 is a flight suit used to pilot a mammoth Mysterium tech, the Sentinel Buster. I want to read our final sentence here in the preview. It states, "With love and admiration to the work of Walter Simonson and Sal Buscema." Really happy to see Marvel shout out those two creators who have just contributed so much towards the Iron Man property. One interesting element of the core Iron Man book is that Tony Stark is building or writing this autobiography. And Invincible Iron Man 16 picks up on some captions detailing Tony's brand new armor that he's built to try and battle the rest of these Stark Sentinels. Let's check in on some of these captions now. "Much is said about me, both true and false. But on one matter, my fans all agree, Tony Stark is a man of privilege. I was born to money and made more of it, as our capitalist founders intended. But I'm also privileged in the brains department. And I've got good friends, one of whom helped me make this day possible. Riri Williams took my designs for this behemoth and ran with them. The armor is a Mysterium alloy, and unfortunately, I had to test it on the field of battle." I really appreciate how Jerry Duggan is checking in with Tony Stark as he's introducing so many of the plot threads towards like Fall of X, maybe to newer readers checking out this particular chapter. Also, this is such a fun issue of Iron Man because it just features a really big fight sequence. So many of the previous installments have kind of set up the X-Men's animosity and how Iron Man fits into the picture. Firestar set a trap for Orcus by feeding them the lie that a mutant invasion of Earth would occur in the Australian outback. Yeah, we once again have Orcus trying to tarnish the X-Men's name in each and every opportunity. Also, in terms of this latest Iron Man run, Tony Stark has featured so many battles between the Orcus character of Fei Long, who's just an industrialist, really captured by some of those elements of Mars. Yeah, Tony and Fei Long have been fighting since the very early issues of this brand new Iron Man book. Instead, Fei Long's Stark Sentinels would face my biggest armor yet, the Mark 73 Sentinel Buster. Today was a reckoning, and it had been a long time coming. Fei Long gained control of Stark Unlimited by killing board members and buying stock, eventually incorporating all my designs into Orcus. I had to engineer my way out of facing 30-foot tall versions of my most powerful armors. It's kind of interesting to interpret Fei Long's rise to power versus Tony Stark. Fei Long's ethics definitely are not as admirable as Iron Man. The fact that he kind of killed off some of Iron Man's, most trusted advisors in terms of the Stark Unlimited company, and also kind of leveraged some financial crimes by buying stock. Super, super interesting, and just shows how much different Fei Long approaches business as opposed to Tony Stark himself. This is our final preview page on Invincible Iron Man 16. Let's check in with Tony's narration and close this one out. As I faced the bulk of the Sentinels in Australia, the X-Men were launching their counterattack. We'd all be dead by dawn, or Orcus would be destroyed, and we'd live to fight another day. There was no holding back now, no negotiation. There was nowhere to fall back to. Yes, so many issues of Iron Man have really been setting up Tony's battle with Fei Long, Stark Unlimited, and the rest of Orcus. So once again here showing Tony finally go on the defensive and really craft his armor made out of the Mysterium alloy. Super, super cool to realize on the page. It feels so cathartic to check out each and every Creasley illustrated page of Invincible Iron Man 16 here. I want to know from anybody in chat, are you reading this book? How do you think it serves as a sister to Jerry Duggan's other work with Fall of the House of X and X-Men? We have one final preview for you today. This one is really epic for me. This is XMenForever. So we have so many ancillary X-Men books working together with Fall of the House of X and Rise of the Powers of 10 to try and close out the X-Men's Krakoan age. But for me, I'm still really, really excited about this one in particular because it features Kieran Gillen really trying to write a coda to so many of the mysterious plot threads dangling in terms of X-Men's Krakoan age. I'm talking about elements like the Dominions, as well as Mother Righteous herself, and the characters of Destiny and Mystique. So many of these preview pages for XMenForever have featured Jean Grey in this really ominous setting as well. So really interested to check in with her and to see how she's faring in this really interesting status quo that Marvel has now been eclipsed within. Without further ado, let's check out one of my favorite X-Men titles, or a brand new X-Men comic book, XMenForever Issue 1. Haunted House of X. How can you kill a digital god? What do you have when the Phoenix is bleeding out into nothing? There's been questions that have been haunting you since the end of Immortal X-Men. Finally, some answers. There's also some questions that have haunted you since the start of Immortal X-Men. Finally, some answers there too. Tying directly into the pages of the epic Fall of the House of X and Rise of the Powers of 10 comes this story from Kieran Gillen and Luca Maresca. XMenForever 1 illustrated by Luca Maresca, featuring writing from Kieran Gillen and a cover from Mark Brooks. So the very first page introduces 1899 London and introduces these really mysterious plot threads featured in Immortal X-Men back within the narrative. We have characters like Destiny and Nathaniel Essex talking here about some of the plot threads that linger and combine them together. On the next page, Destiny is able to reference some of the plot threads from Rise of the Powers of 10 while she's in the very late 18th century. This page really broke my mind in so many instances. I am shocked to see how Marvel was able to combine elements of the past, present, and future together in a way that feels completely new. So much of Kieran Gillen's previous issues of Immortal X-Men have been setting up this continuity, but to see it finally realized on the page from artist Luca Maresca is absolutely incredible. In the middle, we have the villainous X-Men AI called Enigma. We also have the character of Nimrod, Colossus, Wolverine, and the Krakoan tree. We even get a reference towards the X-Men's Hellfire Gala with Moira also driving a blade into the back of Jean Grey. Plus a reference towards Fall of the House of X2 with Cyclops being on trial in Paris. Yeah, really, really beautiful page. I see now how X-Men Forever is really trying to close out the Krakoan era. And then on this next page, we get a return to so many of the plot threads lingering just within the surface of Immortal X-Men with Destiny, Exodus, and we also have Hope featured alongside Mother Righteous. These characters are still in the White Haunt room in no time and no place. Finally, the X-Men are getting a little bit more trepidatious about trusting Mother Righteous. Mother Righteous has tricked these characters time and time again, and in some previous chapters of X-Men, she even tried to ascend to become a Dominion character. So the fact that these X-Men are finally not trusting her and kicking her to the curb, I think, is a really good idea for Marvel's mutants in terms of their self-preservation here. Very impressed with some of the artwork and the structures of the page from Luca Maresca, as well as these really strong facial expressions. I'm also just so thrilled that Kieran Gillen is so ambitious in terms of his plotting and scripting on X-Men Forever. The fact that we have so many timelines merging on one single page makes this comic book for me just feel so epic and so unique here. Man, I really say out of all of Marvel's comic books upcoming in the next couple weeks, closing out the Fall of X era, I think this one for me is going to be the single most exciting title. Okay, so I want to go ahead and close out our stream today with X-Men Monday. So this one features Steve Folks and Steve Orlando, as well as Philip Sevy, talking about X-Men Unlimited. This one written by Chris Hassan over on Adventures in Poor Taste, published on March 11th. Welcome, X-fans, to another uncanny edition of X-Men Monday at Adventures in Poor Taste. It's no secret that every X-Men character has at least one diehard fan. That's a big reason why the X-Men Unlimited Infinity comic on Marvel Unlimited has been such a hit with X-fans, especially since writers Steve Folks and Steve Orlando kicked off their lengthy run in Unlimited 106. From Sunfire and Firestar to Thunderbird and Captain Britain, everybody's getting time to shine in a scrolling format. So it was only fair that X-fans got to check in with the Steves, along with Philip Sevy, the artist, on several of Marvel's X-Men Unlimited chapters, and ask about Richter, Shatterstar, and other fan favorites. I have never read a single issue of X-Men Unlimited, mainly because I just didn't know that you could really seek it out. So I'm really curious to hear what the Steves, as well as Philip Sevy, have to say about what they have in store for some future chapters. Welcome back to X-Men Monday, Steves. Excitement for your X-Men Unlimited run is high, and a lot of X-fans submitted questions. So let's kick things off with X-fan Chris Garcia, who said this arc has been great at juggling multiple characters and giving proper spotlight to each of them. How did you go about pitching all of this, or was it pitched to you? Steve Orlando says, as it happens, Folks and I both had experience working on the Unlimited format. In my case at least, I'd put in a lot of time on X-Men Green, as well as Who is the Scarlet Witch. And I'd been pretty vocal about really getting into the vertical comic book strip format. So when the time came to do a parallel and limited series for Rise of the Powers of 10 and Fall of the House of X, I'm surprised our names came up. That said, while the pitch was to us to develop a parallel run, the story of that run was pretty much wide open. And that's how we came up to work on our external threat. And hey, folks and I got an Eisner nomination together on Rainbow Bridge from Aftershock, so our XP is strong as a package deal. Yeah, getting our X-Men characters referencing the Resist storyline from the Hellfire Gala in terms of X-Men Unlimited is a super cool way to explore this plot thread. So Steve Folks says, since Steve Jr. covered the broader how and why, I'll add that the sprawling cast evolved as a way to feature some of the characters and concepts we knew we wouldn't have a print book during this final stretch of the Krakoan era. Since we started developing this while we were writing Fall of X titles, we had a first-hand view of the spring 2024 line shaping up. And I felt that there was a pretty big New Mutant-shaped void. As we kept building out the scope of the story, which ends up being roughly 6 print issues give or take, we began pulling in parts of Excalibur, X-Corps Marauders, and more to really pay homage to this entirety of the saga as it began in House of X and Powers of 10 back in 2019. Yeah, an interesting aspect about this article here is how it references so many of the early X-Men Krakoa series. I'm really interested to see Steve Folks pay off some of those plot threads from Excalibur all the way to Marauders, detailing even more elements of House of X and Powers of 10. We're going to get into some individual character questions in a bit, but first, X-Fan Shaney wanted to know which characters you've enjoyed bringing to the X-Men Unlimited who haven't had a chance to shine in the various Krakoan era series. Orlando says, I think it's pretty clear how much I enjoy working with Thunderbird, going back to his rebirth in Trial of Magneto and the utter blast I had working with Nyla Rose to write giant-size X-Men Thunderbird. Thunderbird and I see the world in very similar ways, so he's always fun to have on board. And yes, I was also very excited to finally do a bit with El Agula. That guy's got a ton of potential, and his costume was designed by Dave Cockrum, one of the GOATs. Thunderbird, definitely an off the beaten path in terms of Marvel's X-Men. It's kind of interesting to hear that Steve Orlando really finds himself kind of empathizing and lending a lot of characterization to this character. Aside from Carmen Cruz, who's now known as Faint, who I was excited to write one more time following Dark X-Men, I'd have to say our villains, the Externals, because they come from a certain part of the 90s. A lot of readers have divisive opinions on them, and their Krakoan story mostly involves being literal set dressing. It has been fun to explore their personalities, watch one of their killer collaborators, Philip Sevy, give a few of them visual refreshes, and to see how much trouble they can cause when they mostly all work together. AIPT says Philip Sevy, the same Philip Sevy who asked who is the better artist to work with between Nick and Phil, and why is it Nick? Orlando, I guess that would depend who I'm working with as I stand between Nick and Phil. Folks says, what a sneaky way to prompt us to talk about our outstanding alternating art team. We lucked all the way out landing Nick and Phil for this story, and it's been a real joy to watch them not just bring the scripts to life, but to encourage and push one another onward. We have an email thread that's got the whole team together so Nick and Phil can share references and read each other's scripts, and it's just a non-stop love fest with these two, which is just about as perfect as you can hope to find with collaborators. The extra rad thing has been tailoring certain chapters to their individual strengths and interests, like giving Nick a story involving mech designs or tossing Phil the most 90s of showdowns. Fully a dream team in play, including our all-star colorist, Yen Nitro. Now that Phil's joined the conversation, Phil, you're drawing so many different characters throughout this X-Men Unlimited arc. As an artist, is that an exciting challenge or an intimidating one? Philip Sevy says you don't sign up to draw X-Men comics without hoping you get to draw a million characters. It's a deep and exciting and intimidating challenge. The X-Men character bench is deep, If I'm able, I always try and figure out what the physical differences between the characters are. How tall are they and how much do they weigh? And how does that compare to another character? How might they move different? With this book, since there are so many characters that come at you so fast, I haven't had as much time. But there are basic shortcuts that you can use to capture a character. Thunderbird, big guy, cocky, aggressive. Shatterstar, lithe, flirty, agile. Betsy, powerful, annoyed, a presence, etc. Keeping costume details correct when you're drawing a gaggle of characters can be really hard. Thankfully, I have a giant reference folder that I open constantly. AfroSF says, I used to love the externals in the 90s X-Force books. Whatever happened to Gideon? Let's see if we can find out here. Speaking of that reference folder, not only are you bringing so many characters to life, but you're also illustrating some very obscure mutants from X-Men history, such as Gideon, Necomedius, and Absalom. What has your research process been like? And Absalom has never looked cooler, by the way. Thank you so much. The externals have been very fun. The Steves came in with a definitive take and approach on them, so it gave me a direction to take when drawing them. Early on in the process, we had a list of characters we wanted to give a refresh to in regards to their costumes. Most of the externals were on that list. Beyond a read-through of their character histories, I took the aspects each embodied and tried to figure out if there was a way to show those in their new designs. For Absalom, he had just been killed in the external gates. Okay, see Excalibur 2019. So I wanted to show the trauma of how this event was manifesting and how he was surrounding his body in protective manner with his bone growths. And as things get more dangerous, those growths grow. For Burke, someone who sees the future, he wears a blindfold now so his vision is focused, fortitude being his core focus. Yeah, AfroSF, I really see what you're saying here. This book looks so interesting. I wish Marvel was publishing it in terms of their main slate of books here. Steve Orlando, Steve Fox, really strong writers. And frankly, I'd like to see what both of them could bring to the X-Men together. Okay, I'm happy El Agula came up naturally because X-fan Dan Elliott actually wanted to thank you, Steves, for bringing in El Agula and asked if there were any more plans for him. Orlando, I would love to work with El Agula more. I think he's got a ton of potential and would love for him to appear again. Will he? It all depends on panel space, but he's got love for me either way. I actually hope he can appear once more to enact revenge on Orcus. And here he is, El Agula himself. X-Fan Nora wanted to know if there was anything you really wanted to tackle in X-Men Unlimited and couldn't find the space for. Orlando, there's always more, always more. Honestly, as we rethought the externals, I came to be really interested in every single one of them and wish we had time to explore them. Hey, maybe there's time to do that in another book. Here is Saul, Gideon, and Burke. With the cast this sprawling, you always end up falling for individual characters, wishing you could have written one more of them. But truthfully, we started from a really detailed outline and have deviated very little. So there's not much of a, oh, if we only could have feeling. Could I write more Shatterstar, Mirage, Jamie Madrox, WizKid? Yeah, almost endlessly. But we're telling the full story we set out to tell. In X-Men From the Ashes, I really hope WizKid and Jamie Madrox have some kind of platform. X-Fan Escani's Flame said Betsy Braddock came out swinging in X-Men Unlimited with a voice that's more certain and powerful than what we've seen recently. Would you say all the events happening in the UK and the world have brought out this different side of Betsy? And how much fun is writing her this way? Orlando, I think the events in the UK and the world in general have put Betsy in an imperative position, but it's been a blast to watch her flex her power and agency. And as a special note, it's been an asset having some fellow X-Men writers on speed dial to ensure Betsy's British lingo is on point as possible. In a recent Betsy Braddock Captain Britain series, we got to see how much animosity there was between the public as well as Betsy herself. Folks, I think our Betsy follows pretty closely on the heels of the transformative work Teenie Howard did on the character across Excalibur, Knights of X, and Betsy Braddock Captain Britain. Betsy, in whatever form, has been a nuanced and quite spicy character for decades, and Teenie helped establish Betsy as a leading lady for a new era. Fall of X pushed a lot of characters to their limits, and Betsy, who not only has responsibilities toward mutant kind, but to the United Kingdom as a symbolic crusader, really got a raw deal trying to tolerate the antics of Orcus and the British government. She's been enormous fun to write and a huge asset to the cast dynamic. Phil, I've loved your rendition of Betsy Braddock. Not only has that helmet not ever looked cooler, but I feel like every time we see her, she's accompanied by crackling psychic energy. What do you love about illustrating Betsy? We don't often get the artist kind of comment on their perspective, so interesting to see what Sevi has to say about illustrating Captain Britain. I've tried to use the helmet in a way that illustrates her power. When her helmet is off, she's Betsy, and she's a bit more vulnerable. She's showing you her face and what she looks like. I draw her as more feminine in those scenes. When her helmet is on, it's go time. I use that as a reason to draw her as more aggressive and masculine. She's in battle and at war. As a character, I very much connect with how Betsy's identity is internal, and her external representation isn't always reflective of who she is. So trying to show different sides of her and how I depict her as the fun challenge, and also I came into the X-Men with the Jim Lee Psylocke design. It was psychic knives and all that. So when I got a chance to draw her impaling Absalom's head with her dagger, I was like, yeah, 9-year-old me is so happy right now. A little sad about how so many of Betsy's titles during the Krakoan age met something of a premature end. X-Men From the Ashes hopefully will bring Betsy back in a much different position, and hopefully we'll explore her in a lot more depth than the Krakoan age got a chance to. The Techno Priest is a big fan of the work you've all done with X-Men Unlimited and has a question regarding Thunderbird. How old do you see John being in relation to the rest of the X-Men Unlimited cast? John was meant to be young when he joined the army. It's pretty much established that he lied and enlisted into the Marines at 17. Spent 2 years deployed and came back. Now he resurrected immediately after he died, so shouldn't he be older than 21? But that clearly would put him around the same age as Jimmy and other X-Forcers. Any thoughts? Orlando says, I think it's entirely possible he's in his early 20s, physically as you suggest. That's the wonder of Krakoan resurrection. After all, Somnus is pushing 90 mentally, but was reborn in his prime. Somnus, very unique character implemented by Orlando in some other books. With Thunderbird, he was clearly hardened by his time deployed in war, regardless of his age, and as someone with close family members who fought in the same war as Thunderbird, I've seen how that can even harden a young soul. While Thunderbird may be in his early 20s, there are absolutely city miles he put on before his initial death. Has Steve seen other family members fight in the Sion Kong War? X-Fan Pame needed to say that she loves her man Richter is back. Pame has been missed him so much and stated that he couldn't look better. Hence her question. He's been around since the late 80s and has been a part of so many X teams, New Mutants, X-Force, X-Factor, and Excalibur. So what are your favorite Richter stories, and what do you enjoy the most about writing him? Orlando says, I was a big fan of him back in the X-Force as a kid. But for me, I think he really came into his own in the Peter David, Ryan Sook X-Factor run. Never got the chance to check out Peter David and Ryan Sook's X-Factor, but man, Ryan Sook, just a great artist, lends such a unique visual interpretation to the page, and Peter David is so great with characterization too. Coincidence, that's the book that cemented him and Shatterstar. That's part of it. But honestly, everyone got so much depth in that run. It's also the run that made me love Siren, Strong Guy, and any member of the characters who appeared. Folks says, I've got to echo Steve too here. I was the right age for the Peter David and Company X Factor to become my definitive version of a lot of characters. Hence why Madrox and Lila are part of the story. But Richter always interested me as a kid too. Elemental powers are such a layup for reader appeal. I love spotting him in the Genosha episodes of X-Men the Animated Series, and I had the Toy Biz action figures that you can wind up and shake slightly to simulate his mutant abilities. Rick's fun from the very beginning of his existence because he was such a little punk at a time when the New Mutants were more or less pretty straight-laced. Rick and Boom Boom and the other younger cast members introduced in the first X Factor volume helped set up the template for how rowdy and multifaceted younger X fans would become. Really interested commentary over from Steve Folks talking about the team dynamics in terms of Peter David's X Factor. I dig writing him now because he's still got a bit of an edge to him. Also, this new dimension of really trying to focus and improve his powers thanks to the tutelage under Apocalypse. You'll see Rick pull off some pretty big stunts before we're done. I think I remember seeing Richter in one of the Betsy Braddock miniseries. I'm super intrigued with how he's going to pop back up and from the ashes. I'm sure we'll see him in some capacity. X-fan Tanya B has loved the different ways you've been depicting Richter's powers. What were some of your inspirations for how you've been capturing them? So this is artist Philip Sevey. He says, the Steves have just given me great direction on Richter's power manifestations. When I was a kid, he made earthquakes, more or less. At least that's what my memory held on to. With his druidic evolution under Teeny Howard, his expansive powers has allowed us a wide range of power interpretations. In X-Men Unlimited 128, I got a chance to draw him forming hands from the ground and slamming into Nicodemus. That idea was totally a Steve's call, but it was cool to see. But it was really cool to see to figure out how to make that work visually. X-Fan Vicky said there's been a lot of discussion online after the release of the X-Men 97 trailer, with certain people complaining how the X-Men have never been queer. So it feels good to have Richter and Shatterstar back. This is a gay couple that writers tried to make canon since the 90s and had naturally developed in the pages of X-Force. What do you think makes them work so well together since then, and what is your favorite thing about this couple? Before we get into it, AfroSF says, I am so glad the Sion Kong War is being addressed by current writers. It makes sense Thunderbird fought in it with the sliding timescale. Steve Folks and Steve Orlando are such great writers that put so much of like the X-Men in context with the overall history. I think this is such a great article. I wish I was reading more X-Men Unlimited here. Okay, so let's hear more about X-Men 97. Steve Orlando says they've certainly had their ups and downs, but I enjoy their perseverance and all the wild twists comics can throw at a couple. Shatterstar and Longshot finding out they are in a way both each other's son and father due to some timey-wimey occurrences. There's the X-Men continuity for you. I'm a strange person myself, even if I'm not from Mojo World and I don't have swords of any kind. So I've always identified with Shatterstar, and seeing him and Richter work in general has long pleased me. Really beautiful panel. Personally, one of the reasons Rick and Star resonated with me when their relationship was committed to the page is that they're messy. They both have baggage, hang-ups, ex-drama, they fight each other through major incompatibilities, and they keep finding their way back to each other. Nothing bores me more as a gay reader who's been out for more than 20 years at this point than frictionless, simple, boringly happy fictional gay couples who get together and hardly experience ups and downs. We deserve our fun messes too. Yeah, that's true. I think some of the writing for these LGBTQ characters written by people who don't have those experiences are not as informed as what a writer like Steve Folks would bring to X-Men Unlimited. So I'm so happy that we have him in the driver's seat here. Before we wrap up, Phil, what X artists have inspired you? Sevi says, all of them. Jim Lee's X-Men made me go, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. When I was younger, Joe Mad and Chris Pacolo blew my mind. As an artist, Stuart Immonen's All New X-Men is some of the best X-Men has ever looked. Stuart is the best mainstream artist of all time and deserves way more recognition than he gets. I don't know if I agree with this. Like, I think Pepe Larraz and RB Silva, Pepe Larraz in particular is probably on the same level for me as Stuart Eminem. Also, like Jamie McKelvey, I think is like one of the best, probably illustrators at Marvel or DC. Period. Even though he's like not working there very long, but I think this is really selling Marvel Comics Big Two artist short. Like I just checked out the preview for Green Lantern War Journal. Like Montos's art is so beautiful, and it's a little bit weirder than what we've seen from Stuart Eminem. So, man, I think Philip Sevy should check out maybe some other Big Two comics. Just an absolute, but I do like Steve. To be fair, though, I really do like Stuart Eminem. X-Men has been blessed with a cornucopia of riches for art. Paul Smith, John Romita Jr., Pepe Larraz. Okay, good to see him reference um, really important modern X-Men artists like Pepe Larraz, Frank Quitely, and John Cassaday. I have the entire Chris Claremont X-Men run in omnibus forms right behind me. If we're on a Zoom call, they're like the angels and devils on my shoulder. X-Men made me want to draw comics, and now I want to be an X-Men artist. It's surreal and amazing. I'll never take it for granted or not be eternally grateful to draw in the little corners of the X-Men world that I'm able. Speaking of Phil's X-Men art, here are a few of Phil's pages to give a behind-the-scenes look at how these comics look pre-scrolling format. Okay, one of the things I've been just kind of chomping at the bit to see wrap up in the Krakoan era is what's going on with Selene. We can clearly see Selene referenced in this image. Man, I just can't load it. I've been super curious about what Betsy's been up to, and we have artwork for Betsy too. Okay, let's see what happens when we click on these images. Oh, very cool, very cool. Okay, so this one looks like it features Richter, and we have Betsy. Really strong interpretations of the page here coming from Philip Sevy. Beautiful action shots here too. Looks like we have Betsy meeting up with Richter and Shatterstar on this page. Philip Sevy great at really strong character emotions. And also this third panel is so visceral too and has a beautiful perspective. This one features so much space up at the top that it really manages to capture my interest in an arresting way. Once again, great sense of page design. Okay, here we have Shatterstar and a mysterious figure who I can't quite place over in the background. Still, we have great panel bleeds, strong characterization, and just really great visuals here. Here's another glimpse at Shatterstar featured on like a single page spread here. Okay, finally, are there any more X-Men Unlimited chapters to come which appear to feature Gambit, Feint, and other beloved X-Men characters? What can you tease? Folks will have more, I'm sure, but for me, it's all been building to Cruel versus Thunderbird. Round 2, baby. Folks says, what to let slip? How about the fact that X-Corps has a whole roster of reinforcements we've yet to tease on the page? We're not done pulling out your faves for one last blowout. On that note, thank you, Steve, and Phil for stopping by X-Men Monday to discuss X-Men Unlimited. Let's check in on some of the additional preview pages that X-Men Monday always posts for upcoming X-Men books. I'm wondering if this one is a tease at a recent issue of Dead X-Men. Here in this next panel, we have characters like Jamie Madrox and Thunderbird, as well as Betsy. So this one has to be a panel over for X-Men Unlimited. Here's a look at Wolverine running across over from some Stark Sentinels too. Can't quite place where this one is from. Here we have a look maybe at Nightcrawler, who is seemingly emerging from one of the Krakoan pods here. And it looks like we have another tease at the upcoming issue of Resurrection of Magneto on sale this Wednesday, featuring like the Mask of Annihilation, Storm, and a very angry Max as well. And this one has to be a preview for Fall of the House of X, I really liked the most recent installment of that book that came out and thought there was some really good character work in that one too. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and do it over for our stream today. We're going to be back. We're going to be covering a lot of DC Comics material. I want to thank you so much for checking out our stream today and for exploring the X-Men. We'll be back tomorrow to explore all this stuff in a lot more depth. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.